The policeman stepped out, oh so proud on his beat, when a vision came to him of stripes on his sleeve. Promotion, he whispered, I'm sure of today, so come with me, Mr. Aitor-aliyah. Come tell me your name, says the limb of the law, to the little fat man selling wares on the straw. What's that, sir? My name, sir, 'tis there on display, and it's Moses Aitor-aliyah. Now the trial came on and it lasted a week. One judge said 'twas German, another 'twas Greek. Prove you're Irish, said the policeman, beyond it say nay, and we'll sit on it, Moses Aitor-aliyah. Now the prisoner stepped up there as stiff as a crutch. Are you Irish or English or German or Dutch? I'm a Jew, sir, I'm a Jew, sir, that's come over to stay, and my name it is Moses Aitor-aliyah. We're two of a kind, says the judge to the Jew. You're a cousin of Briscoe, and I am one too. This numbskull has blundered, and for it will pay. Asha, that's right, says Moses Aitor-aliyah. There's a garbage collector who works down our street. He once was a policeman, the pride of his beat. Now he moans all the night and he groans all the day, singing Moses Aitor-aliyah.
And now we go on with the post. That was it for the Irish. Other than, again, to just say one more thing. The Irish initially were incredibly pro-Israel. About 75 years ago, it was the mafia, the Italian mafia, and the Irish of New York who ran Manhattan's docks and Jersey City docks and helped the Jews run guns illegally to Israel during the War of Independence. The mafia did what they had to do, and the Irish were incredibly pro-Jewish because they saw in Israel going to war against Britain to drive out the British, bombing and shooting as the Irgun, the Lehi, and the Haganah did. They saw a parallel to the Irish Republican Army, driving out the British under Michael Collins. That's the way it was for about 50 years. A new generation came. And the new generation, which has been raised on social media, including Instagram and TikTok and all the garbage that's out there, has been sold a different story. And their story is that Israel is the British. The British colonialists, just as they took Ireland and repressed the Irish, and the Irish fought for their freedom, the Israelis colonialists have repressed the Arabs, and now the Arabs are fighting for their freedom. And we know that there's just no parallel. We didn't, as I said before in the beginning, the Irish were banned by the British from having their language, and they couldn't grow their food, and everything I told you earlier. And Israel gave them the Gaza in 2005. I know you all know this, I'm just putting it together for you. Israel gave them the Gaza in 2005. And Israel wanted them to have their own country, just leave us alone and call it whatever you want. And Israel just walked out. And they even left behind, they didn't destroy their stuff as they walked out. They left even behind the synagogues. They knew that the Muslims are not going to use them as shuls. They took the Torahs, they left behind all the agricultural things they had created, the hydro water, the hydro planting, and all the different things they had, the indoor farming. And we saw a few weeks ago how Israel's a world leader in cherry tomatoes, and they left everything for the Arabs. And it was the opposite of the British. The only way to get rid of the British was really through terrorism of the IRA. And the tragedy is that the Irish really have been sold a bill of goods now. There are two Irelands. It's mostly the South, which is called the Republic of Ireland. That's the Catholic Ireland. And unfortunately, it's the most anti-Israel country in Europe. Northern Ireland is a little piece of that Irish, mostly Protestant, and they're happy to be allied with the British. They were fighting against the Catholics, and that's how that's different. Okay. And now we're going to continue with and that was it for the Irish thing. Again, I'm sorry that we had the delay. We're going to continue with the program. And for anybody who joins late, I will replay the first 15 minutes or so after the program for the benefit of those who join in the middle. Again, thank you so much. Here we go.
בקרוב תזרח השמש, נדע ימים יפים מאלה, הלב נלחם בדאגות. כולם יחזרו הביתה, נחכה להם למטה, הלוואי נדע בשורות טובות. כי עם הנצח לעולם לא מפחד, אפילו כשקשה לראות. כולם ביחד, אף אחד פה לא בודד, שישרפו המלחמות. עם ישראל חי, אם לא נשכח תמיד להיות מאוחדים. עם ישראל חי, בעליות בירידות גם בשעות הכי קשות. הקדוש ברוך הוא שומר עלינו, אז מי יכול עלינו? כי אין לנו עוד מדינה. תעשה שלום בינינו, שמור על ילדינו, כי לא אבדה האמונה. עם ישראל חי. עם ישראל חי. אור ארצי נחלתנו, לא תיפול כעת רוחנו, מסביב ברזל של חרבות. ויונה תפרוס כנפיים, התקווה בת שנות 2000, עוד נצא לשיר ברחובות. כי עם הנצח לעולם לא מפחד, אפילו כשקשה לראות. כולם ביחד, אף אחד פה לא בודד, שישרפו המלחמות. עם ישראל חי, אם לא נשכח תמיד להיות מאוחדים. עם ישראל חי, בעליות בירידות גם בשעות הכי קשות. הקדוש ברוך הוא שומר עלינו, אז מי יכול עלינו? כי אין לנו עוד מדינה. תעשה שלום בינינו, שמור על ילדינו, כי לא אבדה האמונה. הקדוש ברוך הוא שומר עלינו, אז מי יכול עלינו? כי אין לנו עוד מדינה. תעשה שלום בינינו, שמור על ילדינו, כי לא אבדה האמונה. עם ישראל חי. כי עם ישראל חי.
בוקר טוב. מאז
This morning, there was a special meeting of the Israeli cabinet in which Netanyahu gave a 3.5-minute speech responding. He doesn't say the name Charles Schumer, but he's clearly responding to Schumer, and he's responding to Biden, as well as the others that are pressuring Israel into a ceasefire and not to continue its fight into the last part of Gaza, southern Gaza, Rafah. This is his response. He's using the meeting of the cabinet instead of formally, this is how he's doing it. Because it's in Hebrew, I'll be translating. From the beginning of the war, we have been fighting on two fronts.
מאז תחילת המלחמה אנחנו נלחמים בשתי חזיתות, בחזית הצבאית ובחזית המדינית.
On the military front and the political front.
בחזית המדינית הצלחנו עד היום לאפשר לכוחותינו
On the military front, we've been incredibly successful to make possible
להילחם באופן חסר תקדים
to fight in an unprecedented way in only 5 full months.
במשך 5 חודשים מלאים. אבל אין זה סוד שהלחצים
But it's no secret, despite our incredible military successes, that we are under extraordinary pressure, international pressure against us, and that pressure is constantly increasing.
בינלאומיים נגדנו מתגברים. בקהילה הבינלאומית
In the international community,
יש מי שמנסים לעצור את המלחמה עכשיו,
there are those who are trying to stop our fight right now,
לפני השגת כל יעדיה.
before we achieve all of our goals.
הם עושים זאת על ידי הטחת האשמות שווא נגד
They're doing it by launching absolute lies and defamations against the army,
צה"ל, נגד ממשלת ישראל,
against the government of Israel,
ונגד ראש ממשלת ישראל.
and against the Prime Minister of Israel himself.
הם עושים זאת על ידי מאמץ להביא לבחירות.
And they're doing it in part based on an effort to force early elections in Israel to vote out our government and replace us with a more government more pliable to them. They're trying to pressure us to call early elections right now.
עכשיו, בעיצומה של המלחמה.
Right now, right in the middle of a war.
ואת זה הם עושים, כי הם יודעים שבחירות עכשיו
And they're doing it because they know that if we suddenly start running national elections right now that are going to run 6 months, it will paralyze the country.
עכשיו יעצרו את המלחמה וישתקו את המדינה לפחות ל6 חודשים.
It'll be 6 months of campaigning. That's what, and is whenever they do an election in Israel, they announce the date 6 months out to allow 6 months campaigning. It will stop the war and it will paralyze the country with everybody fighting each other politically.
אז שיהיה ברור.
So it should be very clear to everybody right now.
אם נפסיק את המלחמה עכשיו, לפני השגת כל יעדיה,
If we stop the war right now, before we achieve all of our goals,
המשמעות היא שישראל הפסידה
the ramification is that Israel will have lost the war. The whole war will have been pointless.
במלחמה. ואת זה לא נאפשר.
And we will not make that possible.
לכן אסור לנו להיכנע ללחצים הללו.
Therefore, it is forbidden for us to bow down to these pressures on us,
ולא ניכנע להם.
and we will not bow down.
להפך, האמת הפשוטה הזאת רק מחזקת את הנחישות
Just the opposite. This truth strengthens our determination
שלנו להדוף את הלחצים ולהמשיך
to continue this war to its end
להילחם עד הסוף, עד הניצחון המוחלט.
until we get total victory.
שום לחץ בינלאומי לא יעצור אותנו לממש את כל מטרות המלחמה.
No international pressure whatsoever will stop us from realizing all the goals of this war.
חיסול החמאס,
Wiping out Hamas,
שחרור כל חטופינו,
freeing all the hostages,
ולהבטיח שעזה לא תהווה עוד איום נגד ישראל.
and ensuring that Gaza will not again comprise a threat against Israel.
כדי לעשות זאת, נפעל גם ברפיח.
In order to accomplish that, we are going to go and continue our war in Rafiah. This is the only possible way to completely eradicate the remaining murderous battalions of Hamas.
היחידה לחסל את שארית גדודי המרצחים של החמאס, וזאת הדרך היחידה להפעיל את הלחץ הצבאי.
It is the only possible way to actualize our military pressure on Hamas
הדרוש לשחרור כל חטופינו.
to free all our hostages.
לשם כך, אישרנו את התוכנית המבצעית
For that purpose, I'm announcing now that we formally have authorized our plan, our military implementation, to go into Rafiah.
לפעולה ברפיח, לרבות קידום הצעדים לפינוי האוכלוסייה האזרחית.
And that also includes that we're advancing our timetable for the steps we need to take to remove the civilian population out of the battle areas.
מאזורי הקרבות. זהו שלב הכרחי לקראת הפעולה הצבאית.
This is an urgent step in order to accomplish our goals, our military.
אלה שאומרים שהפעולה ברפיח לא תקרה,
And those who say that our military action in Rafiah is not going to happen,
הם אותם אלה שאמרו שלא ניכנס
they're the same ones who told us we should not go into Gaza.
לעזה, שלא נפעל בשיפא.
They're the ones who told us that we couldn't go into the Shifa hospital where Hamas was hiding their weapons and all their leaders. They're the ones who told us that we couldn't go into Khan Yunis.
לא נפעל בח'אן יונס, ושלא נחדש את המלחמה.
And those are the same ones who, after the last time we had a ceasefire and got some hostages back, started pressuring us not to resume fighting. We didn't listen to them then, and we're not going to listen to them now.
אחר ההפוגה. ולכן אני חוזר ואומר, נפעל ברפיח.
So I'm saying it again. We are going into Rafiah.
זה ייקח כמה שבועות.
It will take a certain number of weeks, and it's going to happen.
זה יקרה. ולידידינו בקהילה הבינלאומית אני אומר.
And to our friends in the international community, I say this.
הזיכרון שלכם כל כך
Is your memory so short?
קצר? כל כך מהר שכחתם את ה-7 באוקטובר?
You already forgot so quickly what happened on October 7th?
את הטבח הנורא ביותר שבוצע נגד יהודים מאז השואה?
The worst slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust?
כל כך מהר אתם מוכנים לשלול מישראל את
So quickly you're ready to throw Israel under the bus in order to deny her the right to defend herself against the Hamas monster?
הזכות להגן על עצמה נגד מפלצות החמאס? כל כך מהר איבדתם את המצפן המוסרי שלכם?
So quickly you have lost your moral position, your morality,
במקום ללחוץ על ישראל,
instead of pressuring Israel, which is fighting probably the most just war ever. There's never been a more just war than this.
שנלחמת מלחמה שאין צודקת ממנה, נגד אויב שאין אכזר ממנה.
And we're fighting against an evil enemy that they don't come any worse.
תפנו את הלחצים שלכם נגד החמאס.
Why don't you instead put your pressure on Hamas?
ונגד הפטרון שלה, איראן.
And against Hamas's patron, Iran.
הם אלה שמהווים סכנה לאזור ולעולם כולו.
They're the ones who comprise a danger to this region and the entire world.
אנחנו בכל מקרה נעמוד מול כל הלחצים.
But as far as we're concerned, no matter what, we are going to stand up to all pressure.
ובעזרת השם,
And with God's help,
נמשיך להילחם יחד עד לניצחון המוחלט.
we are going to continue fighting until total victory.
תודה לכם.
Thank you very much. And that was in the presence of his entire cabinet today. You possibly heard about it. I don't know if you saw this. Lord Balfour, who issued the Balfour Declaration, November 2nd, 1917, that stated that Majesty's government view with favor the creation of a Jewish national home in Palestine. So as you can see, this is what happened about a week and a half ago to the famous portrait of Lord Balfour. First, spray paint, and then a knife. This is a Cambridge. People are taking photographs. No rush. Last week we saw an anti-Israel demonstration outside a shul in Ontario, Rabbi Koropkin's big shul in Thornhill. They were having a Israel house fair for people who are thinking about making aliyah, where they actually have people from Israel realtors making available and facilitating buying property in Israel. This happened in Teaneck, New Jersey.
We are appalled that they are selling homes in the occupied territories. We're appalled at the assault on Gaza, and we call for a ceasefire. It's a large group of Jews here who do not believe.
What would you do without these Jews? If, assuming they are Jews, which we don't know, and assuming that they're Jews who were born to Jewish mothers or who converted to Judaism properly versus, let's say, Reform conversion. So we don't even know whether they are Jews, but what would we do without Bernie Sanders and George Soros and Ben and Jerry, and for that matter, Chuck Schumer?
That this should be done in our name or with our tax dollars.
It's not our name. It's not your name. We're doing it in our name. We don't like you speaking in our name.
These sales are happening to settlers here in New Jersey, and then they're going out there basically taking homes. This is in violation of international law. The groups here, they try to talk to the official bodies. They try to contact the proper agencies to stop these sales because, again, this is in violation of international law. There's no black and white way of saying, oh, there's a both sides to this. No, this is illegal. It's occupied territories. You can't sell something that isn't yours.
Now they have the audacity to come here to a local synagogue illegally, trying to sell land that does not belong to them. So they're murderers and they're thieves.
Is absolutely disgusting, and people think just because we're here in America that this genocide of the Palestinians is far removed from us, but it's not. It's happening here in our homes, in our backyards, and we have to stand against the Zionists who are doing these.
Last week, after showing a few things that were on the demoralizing side, I shared with you a church that was having an incredibly pro-Israel blessing for Israel. And I wanted it much shorter. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I really want us to know how many Christians in America love and support Israel. Catholics, Protestants love and support Israel. You don't hear about it in the news. You hear the troublemakers, but they're there.
David has said, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And today we're going to do exactly that. Those of you who are here and those of you who are watching across America and around the world, today the Jewish people are at war for their very survival. So let's bow our heads today and pray. Our Father, which art in heaven, King of the universe, the God who calls the stars by name, who holds the seven seas in the palms of his hand. Today we lift up to you the state of Israel and Jerusalem, the city of God. We pray for the families who have been shattered by this vicious terrorist attack. We pray for the women and children who are now placed in tunnels to be used as objects of negotiation in the future. We pray for the wounded from the barrage of rockets. We pray for the IDF that you give them favor to crush the enemies of God. We pray for the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that you give him the wisdom of Solomon in guiding Israel to victory over this tyranny. In your name we are praying. For he that keepeth Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. The word says, let God arise and let his enemies be scattered. The word says, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Let the curse of God come to the enemies of Zion. In your name we pray and ask these things. Amen.
I think it's just so important. It is so important for us to realize how much support there is for Israel in the United States. The media have their agenda. And as you know, from just as you know, when you read in the news, they decide which Jewish organizations to quote, which organizations not to quote, which rabbis to quote. So if there's Jews demonstrating against Israel, that's in the papers. And all this, when was the last time you saw a Chabad rabbi accepted in a screwy story or laying the menorah? But they don't tell you that there are hundreds and thousands of rabbis, Chabad rabbis, other Orthodox rabbis, rabbis like me, you don't hear Orthodox Union, they're never in the media, Rabbinical Council of America. And it's important to know, imagine how many Christians support Israel. And that's what this program is about in part, to understand how much support there is in the United States for Israel. Even if President Biden, right now, one day he's for you, one day he's against you, one day he's in between. Chuck Schumer, this is politics. But Americans are supportive. You see the protesters in the street. You know yourself, when there's something you believe in strongly, you don't necessarily go and protest. They make the noise and they get the publicity and it feeds them because they see they get the coverage, so they come again. They don't have the majority. And it's important to hear someone like this week's Pastor Hagee last week. Here is a very brief, this past week, Israel knocked out another guy who is in the process of and that's the end of that guy. That's the end of what was left over. This was the big story of the week. This was the big story of the week. Israel knocked off number 3, or they believe, they haven't confirmed yet. He hasn't been seen, and they haven't found any parts of him, if they did knock him off. They have 4 main stations, channel 11, 12, 13, and 14. Channel 11 is their PBS, their government's, not government run, but the public TV news. It's like the equivalent of PBS. And Marwan Issa is number 3 after the number 1 guy who's in Qatar and Mohammed Def, and they believe they got him. And it was in the news this week. I'll translate as needed.
שלום לכם, ערב טוב. בישראל ממתינים לאישור סופי על חיסולו של בכיר חמאס מרואן איסה במבצע של צה"ל ושב"כ. איסה מספר 3 בארגון ומי שנחשב רמטכ"ל חמאס ואחד המוחות מאחורי מתקפת 7 באוקטובר.
Let me just take off that other, the double, so you don't need a double caption. Okay, here we go back.
חוסל לפי הערכות בתקיפות עוצמתיות מהאוויר שהיו שלשום במחנה נוסירת שבמרכז הרצועה, שם גם לפי הערכות הסתתר. מיד נעבור להצהרה דרמטית של דובר צה"ל בעניין הזה, אבל נפתח קודם בפרטים חדשים על מבצע החיסול הזה, כשהשורה התחתונה עדיין לא ברורה עד הסוף, ובכל זאת פרשננו לענייני צבא רועי שרון, ראש הממשלה ושר הביטחון כבר רומזים הערב לחיסולו.
כן, כי זאת הערכה בישראל. הערכה היא שהחיסול הצליח ומרואן איסה, מספר 3 בחמאס, אכן חוסל בלילה שבין שבת לראשון. את המידע המודיעיני ושב"כ חיל האוויר תקף שם בתוך מחנה הפליטים נוסרת, אחד ממחנות המרכז. שם ידעו שמרואן איסה מסתתר, והמבצע הזה יוצא לפועל אחרי שבישראל, באגף המודיעין ובשב"כ מעריכים שאין חטופים בקרבתו של איסה, ואז אפשר להוציא לפועל את המבצע לחיסולו, כשהוא נמצא עשרות מטרים מתחת לאדמה, בתוך מנהרה. שם שעה מרואן איסה לפי המודיעין, והחימושים שהוטלו מהאוויר היו בהתאם כדי לפגוע בו, כדי לחסל אותו בעומק האדמה. מתי נדע האם החיסול הזה הצליח? למרות הערכה שבישראל שהחיסול הצליח, עדיין מחכים לאימות. זה יגיע בסוף מהמודיעין, כי חמאס לא מנדב מיוזמתו כמובן את המידע הזה, אז אנחנו נצטרך להמתין לאישור הסופי. האם מרואן איסה חוסל?
תודה רבה, רועי. בהמשך לדברים שלך, אנחנו עכשיו לפרטים חדשים סביב אישור המבצע הזה לחיסולו של איסה. מיכאל שמש, כתבנו הפוליטי, אתה מפרסם את הדברים.
נכון מאוד, מיכל. במערכת הביטחון מתייחסים למבצע הזה כאל מבצע משמעותי מאוד, אחד המבצעים הגדולים מאז שהתחילה המלחמה, ונתניהו וגלנט מעדכנים כבר בשבוע שעבר את קבינט המלחמה, את שרי קבינט המלחמה, בפרטים של המבצע הזה, בתוכנית, וגם דנים בסיכויים של מבצע מהסוג הזה להצליח. צריך לזכור, בסוף איסה היה במקום שנחשב יחסית צפוף ברצועת עזה, מקום שלא הותקף עד עכשיו, וכאמור ההחלטה מתקבלת לצאת ולבצע את המבצע הזה. שרי קבינט המלחמה מקבלים עדכונים גם בלילה שבין שבת לראשון, בזמן אמת. אני לא מכיר בשלב זה התנגדויות משמעותיות למבצע. כאמור, בשורה התחתונה, בישראל מעריכים, המבצע הזה הצליח, ואיסה חוסל.
כן, ממתינים לאישור הסופי. תודה, מיכאל, וכל הפרטים על מבצע החיסול של מרואן איסה, סגנו של דב.
You notice also, by the way, what other country in the world, when you're watching the evening news, and they say we're going to turn now to our political correspondent, they have a guy wearing a yarmulke?
ואחד האנשים החזקים והמשפיעים כאמור בחמאס, והאחריות שנתניהו מקבל היום לראשונה באופן רשמי על חיסול אל-ערורי לפני כחודשיים, בדיווח של כתבנו הצבאי איתי בלומנטל.
And now that they killed number 3, she says, remember just a few weeks ago they killed number 4 in Lebanon.
בתקיפה חריגה שלשום בלילה במחנה נוסרת במרכז הרצועה, מטוסי קרב של חיל האוויר בהכוונה מודיעינית של שב"כ ניסו לחסל את בכיר חמאס מרואן איסה, מספר 3 בארגון הטרור. בישראל לא הודיעו רשמית אם החיסול צלח או כשל, אך בהצהרה שפרסם ראש הממשלה נתניהו בצהריים, בפעם הראשונה קיבלה ישראל אחריות דווקא על חיסול בכיר אחר.
אנחנו בדרך לניצחון המוחלט. בדרך לניצחון הזה חיסלנו כבר את מספר 4 בחמאס, ו3, 2 ו1 בדרך. כולם בני מוות, אנחנו נגיע לכולם.
מספר 4 בחמאס הוא סלאח אל-ערורי, בכיר חמאס חול שחוסל לפני כחודשיים בלב שכונת הדחיה בביירות. עד כה ישראל הרשמית שמרה על עמימות בנושא.
יש הצלחות, כולל מהיממות האחרונות, ויהיו עוד הצלחות. אני משוכנע בעניין הזה.
That's the Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. He's sitting next to on our left Herzl Levy, who's the commander-in-chief, the chief of staff.
אולי עקבית והיא הולכת בכיוון המתאים.
מרואן איסה מכהן בפועל כרמטכ"ל חמאס, הוא נחשב למספר 3 בארגון, סגן ראש הזרוע הצבאית, המקשר בין הזרוע המדינית לצבאית. ב-2006 ניצל מניסיון חיסול יחד עם צמרת חמאס, הוא היה מעורב במשא ומתן לשחרור גלעד שליט, מאדריכלי הטבח ב-7 באוקטובר. בימים האחרונים היה איסה באופן חריג במרכז הרצועה, כפי שפרסם בשבוע שעבר כתבנו אליאור לוי. מעליו נמצאים בהיררכיה החמאסית רק 2, מנהיג חמאס בעזה יחיא סינואר ומפקד הזרוע הצבאית מוחמד דף, שעל פי הערכות נמצאים באזור ח'אן יונס.
استهداف مدنيين طبيعي هو لو بده يستهدف مقاوم في صاروخ زناني بتبعه في صاروخ زناني بيضربه ويقتل على قده. شو الدمار اللي بيسويه هذا عشان استهداف مين؟
בינתיים לוחמי חטיבת הקומנדו ממשיכים בסריקות בשכונת חמד בח'אן יונס, שממנה פעלו מאות מחבלים מאז ה-7 באוקטובר, יחד עם הטנקיסטים מחטיבה 7 של השריון.
And now continuing,
ישראל במצע ציד של...
Here we have channel 14, a very brief review of all the top-ranking Hamas people who have been knocked off in the last few weeks.
בכירי חמאס, ולא רק ברצועת עזה, היום לראשונה ראש הממשלה נתניהו לוקח אחריות על חיסולו של...
He's saying, first of all, that today was the first time Netanyahu formally said that Israel were the ones who killed the number 4 guy in Beirut. Till now, Israel did not claim credit. It was understood who else is going to bomb the guy in Beirut. This was the first time Netanyahu said publicly that Israel had knocked off that number 4.
סלאח אל-ערורי, אותו הוא מכנה מספר 4 בחמאס, הוא מכוון גם ל3 בכירים נוספים. אז את מי כבר חיסלנו ומי עוד נותרו? בגזרת הרצועה בלבד. הראשון...
So who in all among the leaders have we knocked off?
נופל.
First of all, a guy named Ayman Nofel.
אנחנו מכירים אותו כמפקד מרכז רצועת עזה.
We know him. He had been the commander of central Gaza Strip for the word Chusal. Chusal means eliminated. That's his name, Ayman Nofel. Next, Ahmed Randur. He's been eliminated. And he was in charge of the unit of the northern Gaza unit, and together with him, they also killed or eliminated Ayman Siam, who's the head of the rocket division. And of course, the big one until now was Salah al-Aruri, the guy we knocked off in Beirut. And now we have optimistic question mark as to whether we knocked off Marwan Issa, number 3.
מרואן איסה, סגנו של מוחמד דף, ממתכנני ה-7 באוקטובר, ובהנחה שאכן איסה חוסל, אלה מחבלי חמאס שעוד נותרו על הפרק.
Okay, so now here are the 3 remaining ones that are in the top targets.
כמובן במקום הראשון...
This is very different from American news, but this is basic TV news in Israel. This is channel 14. I showed you channel 11. This is from the channel 14 the same night. These are the 3 guys that are still on the target. Who is still left? Mina Shar, who's still left? There's Yahya Sinwar, he's the head of Hamas in Gaza. Mohammed Def, he's the head of the military. And the 3rd guy. And here a story of great excitement. The people in Shlomit returning to southern Israel, people who had been living in southern Israel near Gaza, who had moved out of the area in the aftermath of October 7, are now returning home. The rest of the world, New York Times, Washington Post, BBC, are worried about the people in Gaza. They don't tell you that until now, the people in Gaza were continuing to shoot rockets and missiles into southern Israel. And it still wasn't safe for people who moved back for 5 months, from October 7 to November, December, January, February, March. They didn't have 5 months they couldn't move back. Now they're moving back home. They have been, the Hamas has been quieted.
A long-awaited return home as all 80 families in Shlomit travel back to their community as a whole for the first time since the Hamas onslaught of October 7.
We just came back with all of our bags from 5 months traveling. I had a baby during those 5 months, and we have all of her stuff, and we're just trying to unpack and settle back into our lives somehow, so it's very emotional.
Residents returning with new life and new promises.
Where life ended, we're starting to build the daycare center where life starts. And this is the message to the world, and Am Yisrael Chai.
Rebuilding and expanding on their first day home with plans for a new daycare funded by Jewish National Fund USA.
This is the answer to Hamas. This is the answer to the terrorists, to the dark forces of the world, that we're Am Yisrael, we are the Jewish people, we're returning to our home. We're not just returning, we're building and growing.
While the blue and white flags wave high in the sky, it's still not a festive occasion.
I'm feeling a big dissonance. Part of my soul so happy to go back. I'm so happy to see my children running and smiling and laughing and playing with the friends, and they have their home. It's difficult because the part of my family is not here, right? You join God above.
4 heroes were killed on October 7th. All of the men jumping into action to save the nearby community of Prigan from armed Hamas terrorists.
It was a difficult situation that I needed to handle in my entire life. And then I needed to tell my children.
4 widows and 15 fatherless children are returning to Shlomit in total.
I told them that our daddy is a hero. He went out to save other people's life. And now you are a hero. Because his heroism is going to your blood, into your DNA.
Donna Cohen and the 500 residents who returned as a family are all carrying on her husband's spirit.
I think he will stand up and just clap his hand to say that he's so proud of the people that came here, the people that didn't give up, the people, all the families that believe in this area, believe in Chalutza, and they know that when they're coming back, they're giving strength to all the families in our region.
It's a family. We're a family. We've become even more of a family because we lived together for the past 5 months. We went through a war together. We lost friends. But the people of Shlomit are special.
Rebuilding their community despite the ongoing war, which is likely now nearing Rafah, just a few kilometers away.
It's not easy. We're very worried about the state of what's going on in Gaza. We're not sure where we're coming home to.
The residents were returning. This is the final victory over the enemies.
Not a white flag in surrender, but a blue and white flag of strength and resilience.
This right here. Don't worry, Mr. This is one of the great speeches. Really nice. I was telling the secretary, I was in Jordan and Israel.
This was on the day of the State of the Union.
You got to keep pushing what you're doing on the humanitarian stuff and all this stuff. So
I told him, Bibi, show me this. Bibi, you know I can't come.
Sure, just
That was good.
You may remember that former President Trump basically wiped out ISIS, destroying the terror group and its last strongholds in Iraq and Syria. Well, fast forward to today, and the Islamic State is back and with a vengeance. It's plotting more attacks from its new safe haven in Afghanistan. Who could have seen this coming? Well, joining us now, retired force.
Right, that's Netanyahu's point. If you don't wipe them out completely and you stop before you've done, they'll just come back.
Sergeant General Jack Keane, a Fox News senior strategic analyst. How big do you think this threat is, sir?
Well, it's a growing menace for sure, and it's something that President Biden's military advisors, from the on-scene commander in Afghanistan all the way to the chairman and the Secretary of Defense, the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, and all of our allies, all 6 nations who were there with us in Afghanistan, all said, keep the forces here to prevent ISIS and al-Qaeda from growing into a menace that will threaten our countries. And what did we do? We made a decision to conduct an unconditional surrender. We pulled out our 3 CIA bases, our 7 military bases were shut down, and we said we will still maintain contact with Afghanistan over the horizon. An 8-hour flight by a reconnaissance airplane to get there, 4 hours only on the target, 8 hours to return. That is not much capability trying to keep your eyes and ears on what is going on. This is a menace that's growing. It's attacking inside of Afghanistan. It's beginning to attack the region, and it'll grow into a menace that can attack Europe and the United States. That is what we brought on ourselves by that awful decision. You mentioned President Trump. Yes, he destroyed the caliphate, but what did he also do? He kept forces in Syria and in Iraq, where the caliphate was, minimum forces. In Iraq, it's about the same amount of forces we wanted to keep in Afghanistan. To do what? To make sure ISIS didn't grow into a sanctuary again.
Right.
So we kept those minimum forces for that reason, and it's working. We pulled them out of Afghanistan. Not surprising, it's not working.
It was really remarkable. And I also want to ask you about President Biden's comments about Netanyahu and Israel and this apparent White House decision to sort of back away from Netanyahu. It's like a separation thing, and that you wonder about domestic politics weighing in at the White House on this decision. Listen to him here. He was on MSNBC.
We cannot have 30,000 more Palestinians dead as a consequence of going after. There's other ways to deal with.
with the trauma caused by Hamas. I sat with the war cabinet. I said, look, don't make the mistake America made. We went after bin Laden until we got him. But we shouldn't have gone into Ukraine or the whole thing in Iraq and Afghanistan. It wasn't necessary. It wasn't necessary. It just caused more problems than it raised.
Is that a good comparison, what Israel's trying to do to wipe out Hamas?
No, I mean, absolutely not. Look, it's unfortunate what has happened here. I mean, the disagreements that our president has and his team with Prime Minister Netanyahu and his team and how to conduct this war are now in the public spaces. That is really regrettable. I just wish, frankly, that the president and his team would leave Israel alone here and let them conduct a military operation in accordance with their values and as they see fit. They have taken unprecedented moves to remove the problem that no other military has had in my memory of dealing with such a concentration of civilians that are actually in the combatant zone inside urban centers. When the sound of the guns come, people normally leave. Hamas doesn't let them leave. The Israelis have moved them away as best as they possibly can, and certainly it's resulted, regrettably, in civilian casualties. But the rose has to be pinned. The reason for those casualties is Hamas. We've got this thing twisted and blaming Israel for that. It's not the case. Israel has to finish this. Dana, what they're about, supported by the Iranians, is make the security situation inside Israel for the Israeli people, make that so vulnerable that people don't want to live there. That's what this is all about. If we let Hamas live again because we don't destroy the remaining battalions and their leaders, they're going to rearm and reattack and make the people of Israel vulnerable once again. And that erodes the state of Israel. That's what they're after. They're after its destruction. There's not that many millions of Jews that are living there. And they certainly trust their government and their security forces until October the 7th. And that trust will have to be renewed and regain the trust of the Israeli people, certainly not put it further at risk by not destroying this force.
And in fact, Benjamin Netanyahu on Fox and Friends this morning said that his responsibility is to make sure that another October 7th doesn't ever happen again in Israel. So General Jack Keane, thank you for getting us started on a Monday.
Compelling analysis.
Fox News alert. President Biden calling out Prime Minister Netanyahu as Israel defends itself from Hamas terrorists who murdered more than 1,200 Israelis and still hold more than 100 hostages.
What is your red line with Prime Minister Netanyahu? For instance, would invasion of Rafah, which you have urged him not to do?
It is a red line, but I'm never going to leave Israel. The defense of Israel is still critical, so there's no red line. I'm going to cut off all weapons so they don't have the Iron Dome to protect them. There's other ways to deal with the trauma caused by Hamas.
But the red line is Rafah. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu joins us live from Jerusalem. We don't have to give you the news. You follow American news as if you're still here, Prime Minister. His red line is Rafah. Don't go into Rafah. What's your response?
Look, the president and I have agreed that we have to destroy Hamas. We can't leave a quarter of the Hamas terror army in place. They're there in Rafah. This would be equivalent to saying, you know, after the Allies fought back, gone through Normandy, went through Germany, and you'd say, well, we'll leave a quarter of the Nazi army in place and we won't go into Berlin, the last stronghold. So I think that if the president means by that we should first enable the safe departure of the civilian population from Rafah before we go in, we agree with that. We don't need any prompting.
That's not what he said.
Let's make sure that
That's not what he said. He doesn't want you to go in.
You know, I think you have to ask him what he said, because he agrees. He said that he agrees that we have to destroy Hamas as a fighting organization. That's what we intend to do. Look, it's either Israel or Hamas. There's no middle way. I mean, we have to have that victory. We can't have 3/4 of a victory. We can't have 2/3 of a victory, because Hamas will reconstitute itself with these 4 battalions in Rafah, reconquer the Gaza Strip, and do the October 7th massacre over and over and over again. And for us in Israel, not merely for me,
Mr. Prime Minister,
for the people of Israel, that's a red line. We can't let Hamas survive.
Mr. Prime Minister, we don't want to put you in a difficult position because, we know that you have to work with the U.S. I know we're still strong allies. But there's been multiple comments, whether it was a red line from the President of the United States or Kamala Harris saying that we need a ceasefire now. I know there's been conversations in the press about a fractured relationship. Can you tell us about what's going on between you and the President? Because right now, what I'm hearing from the IDF and some of my friends that are going out there to battle Hamas is that they don't have the support truly of the United States right now, and that you guys are being pressured to come off the gas a little bit. Is that true?
Look, we have our agreements on the basic goals, but we also have disagreements on how to achieve them. Ultimately, it's Israel that has to decide. Our neck is on the line.
Are they encouraging you to get off the gas, though, Prime Minister?
Well, I'm telling you that we're not getting off the gas. I'm telling you that we have to take care of Israel's security and our future, and that requires eliminating the terrorist army. That's a prerequisite for victory. That victory is important not only for us, it's important for the civilized world as we're fighting these barbarians. And let me tell you something. I've seen these recent polls where 82% of Americans support Israel in its battle against Hamas. 82%. That's been constant over the last 5 months. So they recognize that our battle is your battle and our victory is your victory. And I'm sure that deep down, everyone in Washington understands that. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to defeat Hamas. We're going to do what is necessary to minimize civilian casualties, do the humanitarian aid, something that we believe in. But we have to destroy this terrorist Nazi army. Otherwise, there's no future for anyone in the Middle East.
I think everyone, Mr. Prime Minister, is trying to figure out what is meant by President Biden, how that defines your relationship. We're trying to figure out what it means by a red line, what it means by what Lawrence is articulating, and what it means when President Biden says something like this on a hot microphone at the State of the Union. Let's listen together.
We got to keep pushing what you're doing on the humanitarian stuff and all this stuff. So I told him, Bibi, show me this. Bibi,
So what does that mean to you, a come to Jesus meeting?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with the term, even though Jesus wasn't born that far away from here. I can tell you that if it means...
I love this guy. He knows what the term means. It means like an intervention, like an urgent meeting. And he's basically saying the prime minister of the Jewish country, I don't know what that term means. He knows what it means. And then he throws in that point that he was born right nearby.
Having a heart-to-heart conversation, we've had that plenty of times over the 40 years that I've known Joe Biden, and over the 12 or 13 conversations that we've had since the beginning of the war. But ultimately, I'm the Prime Minister of Israel. I'm responsible for the security and future of the Jewish state, and I'm supported in my policies. That's important to understand. The overwhelming majority of Israelis support my policies, that we have to eradicate Hamas as a terrorist and governing organization, that we have to get our hostages back, and that we have to make sure that Gaza doesn't form a threat to us anymore. 99 to 9 Knesset members, that's over 90%, supported my policy of opposing a Palestinian state being rammed down Israel's throat. That's the vote we had the other day. So when people say, well, we have to have this talk with Netanyahu because he's holding back the prospect of this wondrous peace with the Palestinian state, you don't have an issue with me. You have an issue with the entire people of Israel. They're really united as never before in uniting to destroy Hamas and ensure that we don't have another Palestinian terrorist state like the one we had in Gaza that could threaten the state of Israel. That's something that the people of Israel are united behind, and from what I can see, most Americans support that as well.
Most compelling analysis.
I want to say a few words to
I cut the other one short, and I'll do this short also, but he spoke this week to AIPAC.
you, Mr. President.
He was in Jerusalem. AIPAC was meeting in Washington, D.C. So you're going to hear, at the very beginning, you hear some applause. He's talking on Zoom, of course. And you hear some applause, then they turn off the sound from Washington, and it looks a little funny because he'll say a sentence or two, and then he pauses. You don't hear any applause, and you don't see him. What he's doing is he's looking on Zoom at the audience in America, and he's waiting till the clapping stops to continue. He doesn't want to talk over the applause. That's why you'll see he pauses. It's the challenge of making a speech.
President, and to our wonderful friends at AIPAC, thank you for...
You see, he ran into what we ran into at the beginning of the class today. He ran into the echo, so they turned off the sound in Washington. So then it gets a little strange, like he pauses. He's watching the applause till he talks.
Standing with Israel at all times, and especially during these trying times. Thank you, AIPAC. Thank you, AIPAC.
Also, I know Barry Mednick is watching, and he's a big baseball fan, like as I am. And this, whenever you hear an echo like that, you think back to the Lou Gehrig movie.
I deeply appreciate the support we've received from President Biden and the administration, and I hope it will continue. But let me be clear. Israel will win this war no matter what. To win this war, we must destroy the remaining Hamas battalions in Rafah. If not, Hamas will regroup, rearm, and reconquer Gaza. And then we're back to square one. And that's an intolerable threat that we cannot accept. We will destroy Hamas, free our hostages, and ensure that Gaza doesn't ever pose a threat to Israel again. We will finish the job in Rafah while enabling the civilian population to get out of harm's way. We've taken measures to minimize civilian casualties that no other army has taken in history. Just ask Colonel John Spencer, a world expert on urban warfare, in charge of urban warfare in West Point. We have taken measures to minimize civilian casualties that no other army has taken in history. So to our friends in the international community, I say this. You cannot say you support Israel's right to exist and to defend itself, and then oppose Israel when it exercises that right. You cannot say you support Israel's goal of destroying Hamas and then oppose Israel when it takes the actions necessary to achieve that goal. You cannot say that you oppose Hamas's strategy of using civilians as human shields and then blame Israel for the civilian casualties that result from this Hamas cynical strategy. For Israel, every civilian death is a tragedy. For Hamas, every civilian death is a strategy. So it is wrong and immoral to hold Israel to a standard for avoiding civilian casualties that no other country on earth is held to. My friends, I want to assure you, none of these pressures will stop us. Israel's very future, its very survival is at stake. We have no other option but total victory. And that victory is in and within reach. I know that the overwhelming majority of the American people stand with us. I know that the overwhelming majority of Congress stands with us. I know that you stand with us. I know that you're working tirelessly, day in, day out, to get us the tools so we can finish the job faster. And on behalf of the united people of Israel, I want to say thank you, AIPAC. Thank you for everything you're doing for Israel. God bless Israel. God bless America. Thank
you, Prime Minister. See you next week.
Thank you.
Hey, free Gaza.
Just a quick one from last week. It's only a minute.
The genocide and all
But it
of
was
the war
great.
crimes and collective punishment. Are you concerned
Let
about
me
all the
make
children?
Let me make
died
it
in
clear.
Gaza?
Let me make it clear.
This is so
Israel is
great.
our ally. Will always be our ally.
Even if they commit war
and they are
crimes,
not
even
guilty
with-
of genocide.
Sir,
And I
why?
will support Israel forever.
You will
Israel will stay your ally, even though they commit Israel genocide. Will be my, even that's your term.
Even Can when you they kill,
that is
explain?
your term.
Even when they kill 30,000
What
kids,
they
that is a
did to the
statistic.
Israeli
That's a
people
statistic.
on October. Let me tell you a statistic.
Yeah, please.
Israel will exist. The Jewish state will exist.
That's not a
It will always
statistic.
exist,
That's not what we're-
and that is for
That
God
has absolutely
to do
nothing
and
to do with what
decide.
we're saying.
And I will
You are a
always protect
supporter of
Israel.
genocide, sir. You're
I will
supporting
always
the
support
murder of
Israel,
little children.
and you can tell the Palestinians I will
I
never
am a
support
Palestinian
them.
myself.
Then I
I'm
will
a
tell
then
you,
say
I
it to
will
my
never
face.
support you.
Yeah?
I will tell you to your
and
face.
you want my you want my cousins
Goodbye
to
to
die.
Palestine.
Goodbye
I will
to
support
Palestine.
Israel. Goodbye
You want
to
to watch
Palestine.
Palestine?
We will support Israel forever.
So
no.
you are comfortable.
Let's be clear. Hamas raped and murdered babies.
There's no evidence of that.
Since I've seen the footage, and you haven't.
I've seen the footage of
You've seen footage of
shredded children's bodies. And that's my taxpayer dollars.
I-
They're going to bomb those kids.
So I think we should kill them all, if that makes you feel better. Everybody, Hamas and the Palestinians have been attacking Israel for 20 years, and it's time to pay the price.
Well, tonight, Congressman Andy Ogles is standing by his comments he made about Hamas earlier this month.
He says he was approached by pro-Hamas activists on Capitol Hill when this exchange happened.
You've
seen footage of
shredded children's bodies. And that's my taxpayer dollars. They're going to bomb those kids.
So I think we should kill them all, if that makes you feel better.
Representative Ogles says the group should die after committing atrocities that are beyond normal comprehension, like the rape and torture of children. He released a statement saying, in part, "I stand by Israel and their right to punish Hamas on a scale of biblical proportion, including their accomplices and the facilitators of the aforementioned atrocities."
I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama in the 50s and 60s. And I hate to say it, but when I would visit with relatives and parents and grandparents, you know, the conversation about Dr. King and the civil rights movement, you know, it had a lot of the aspects of anti-Semitism today. You know, there's something about the human condition, tragically, that makes us treat people who look or act or believe differently as a pariah, and I don't understand it, but I've seen it. Can I change the world? Probably not as the mayor of a mid-sized American city, but I can do what I can do here, and it's important that I be seen visibly out there, talking and putting my beliefs and my thoughts and out there, and send a message, a signal that I support not only Israel, but I support our local Jewish community, because they feel alone right now. They feel isolated. And the Jewish community is very united, but they need more than just a united Jewish community. They need the non-Jewish community, their friends and supporters, business associates, to come out and say, we stand with them. We stand with Israel. Israel has a right to exist. And after 3,000 years of abuse by a lot of, you know, my religion to a large extent, but not mine alone, we owe them, finally, after all this time, we owe them a place where they can go and be safe.
And this is the last piece, pretty much. Then we're closing with the prayer for the IDF. This is about 50 seconds. While I was preparing the class and looking for other things, I found an old archive clip, 50 seconds, of Menachem Begin, Prime Minister in the 1970s, talking about Shabbat, talking about celebrating every week Shabbat, and what it is like for a Jew to celebrate Shabbat. there was no one like Begin. Even Netanyahu at his best. Begin was the most Jewish, not only Israeli, but Jewish prime minister. I mean, all kinds of people, all kinds of workers, people that ran shoe repair stores and tailors, people who drove wagons, and then Shabbat came. All of a sudden, that shoe repairman and that tailor and that wagon driver became a king. He would have his sons, children sitting around the table, the Shabbat queen, Bari Kala, welcoming the Shabbat as the bride, and every Jew was a king. In the town, in the old shtetls of Eastern Europe, the entire town, there would be no business, no movement on Friday night. Everyone is home, lighting Shabbat candles, reciting Kiddush. There's not a wagon in the streets. Pure silence. Even the non-Jews in those shtetls observed and honored our Shabbat. That was Shabbat in Eastern Europe. Yep. Oh, one more thing. This is so great that I close with this, and then the prayer for Israel, for the armed forces. Professor Mordechai Kedar is a professor at Bar Ilan, head of their Department of Arabic Studies. This is about 10 years ago. Again, as I was preparing class, I came across this. I don't know how this happened, but AlJazeera, the Qatar-sponsored Arab Muslim TV network, invited the head of the Department of Arabic Studies of Bar Ilan for an interview. And he's talking to the Arabic world, and this blew me away.
الدراسات العربية في جامعة بار إيلان. سيد مردخاي، هذا القرار هل هو دق مزيد من الأسافين في نعش المفاوضات الفلسطينية الإسرائيلية؟
أنا حقيقة لا أفهم هذا الكلام. هل على إسرائيل أن تبحث عن إذن من أين في العالم؟ هذه عاصمتنا منذ 3000 عام، وكنا هناك عندما كان آباؤكم يشربون الخمر ويئدون البنات ويعبدون العزى واللات والمنات، فلماذا علينا أن نتكلم عن هذا الشيء؟ هذه هي مدينتنا من 3000 عام وإلى أبد الآبدين.
يا أخي إذا كنت تريد عفوا سيد مردخاي، عفوا إذا كنت تريد أن تتحدث عن التاريخ، أيضا نحن نتحدث عن القرآن. لا يمكن لك أن تلغي القدس من القرآن. أرجوك أن تبتعد عن الألفاظ التي تسيء للعرب والمسلمين، رجاء لنبقى في موضوعنا لو سمحت. الآن هذا القرار ألا يتعارض؟
لم يرد ذكر القدس في القرآن.
سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده.
ذكر القدس لم يرد في القرآن
طيب
ولو مرة واحدة.
يا سيدي لنتحدث بالسياسة. عفوا لنتحدث بالسياسة.
الجزيرة.
لنتحدث بالسياسة لو سمحت.
أوكي. القدس خارج المفاوضات. القدس لليهود نكتة. لا يمكن الكلام عن القدس بأي شكل من الأشكال، وأنتم تعيدون هذه القضية مرة بتلو الأخرى.
عن المستوطنات يا سيد مردخاي، المستوطنات يعني
نحن نتكلم عن شقق، يا أخي نحن نتكلم عن شقق جديدة داخل مدينة القدس.
أنت تتحدث عفوا سيد مردخاي، تتحدث عن بناء حوالي 1000 وحدة، وكان هناك قرار بإقامة 10,000 وحدة، وتم وقف هذا القرار، والآن تتم عملية تسريبات من تحت الطاولة 1000 2000 3. يعني القدس ربما ستشمل الضفة الغربية بعد ذلك، أليس كذلك؟
يا أخي إسرائيل لا تعد الشقق التي تقيمها قطر في شبه جزيرة قطر. فما شأن لكم بالقدس؟ القدس مدينتنا إلى أبد الأبدين، ولا شأن لا للجزيرة ولا لأحد في مدينة القدس. نقطة، هي مدينة لليهود فقط، ليس لأحد أي شأن بمدينة القدس.
يعني هل تريد أن تقول بأن كلامك هذا يعني بأن المفاوضات التي تتم بين الفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين تتم بناء على الأمر الواقع الذي تتحدث به الآن يا سيد مردخاي كيدار؟
يا أخي أنا أدعوك للقدس لتشوف بأم عينك كيف القدس أصبحت مدينة زاهرة بعد أن كانت خاربة تحت أيدي العرب حتى 67. نحن بنينا هذه المدينة من جديد، وهي الآن مفتوحة للمسيحيين وللمسلمين ولليهود على حد سواء، كما لم تكن أبدا تحت سيطرة الإسلام، لأن الإسلام أقصى اليهود من القدس والمسيحيين أيضا.
طيب أنا أريدك أن تعطيني جوابا، تعطيني جوابا، يعني لماذا كلما كانت هناك مفاوضات فلسطينية إسرائيلية تتحدثون عن الاستيطان وتصدرون قرارات بالاستيطان، مزيد من قضم الأرض، مزيد من تهويد الأراضي الفلسطينية، وبالتالي قتل مقومات قيام أي دولة فلسطينية في المستقبل، أليس كذلك؟
هناك حتى اليوم ولا حرج، هناك دولتان فلسطينيتان، دولة في غزة ودولة إن شاء الله ستقوم على الضفة الغربية. وإذا استمر الفلسطينيون في هذا السلوك وعدم الجدية في المفاوضات، ستكون هناك دولة في الخليل ودولة في رام الله ودولة في نابلس ودولة
حسب المواصفات التي تتحدثون، حسب المواصفات التي تضعتها إسرائيل، ولكن القرارات الدولية مخالفة لكل ما تقول به يا سيد مردخاي. القدس الشرقية محتلة 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 محتلة، الكل يعرف بذلك.
الضفة الغربية ليست تابعة لأي دولة في العالم، لأن ليس في هذه المنطقة أي سيادة لأي دولة، مثل أنتاركتيكا في الجنوب. ليس الأردن كانت محتلة لهذه الأرض، ليس في الضفة الغربية أي سيادة لأي دولة بخلاف الجولان، بخلاف جزيرة سيناء، بخلاف أجزاء أخرى. الضفة الغربية ليس عليها أي سيادة لأي دولة في العالم، ولذلك لا يمكن لأحد أن يكون بأن هذه هي منطقة محتلة. من أي دولة احتلت هذه المنطقة؟ الأردن كانت محتلة حتى 67، واليوم إسرائيل أيضا هي تحت سيطرة إسرائيل. هذه المنطقة لا تتبع لأي دولة في العالم، ولذلك نحن نتمكن من أن نقيم عليها ما نشاء.
مردخاي كيدار، قسم الدراسات العربية، جامعة بار إيلان، تل أبيب.
גשם זלעפות ירד ואמרנו זה בוקר לתפילה ולתפילת המונים. כל אחד שנמצא פה, גם הילדים וגם המבוגרים.
This is in Efrat, in part of the Gush Etzion area, where they've got a lot of children together. They gathered together at the school, the children with the grandparents and the parents, everybody together. And they had a memorial program for Uri Mordechai, Uri Mordechai Shani, who was killed on Simchat Torah in the October 7th attack, and Eitan Moore, who is still alive, a hostage. So they got together to pray for them and for the return of the hostages. The children of the school, the community, the grandparents. It took approximately 1 hour to get everybody coordinated, singing together.
ייתן אדוני את אויבינו הקמים עלינו ניגפים לפניהם. הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמור ויציל את חיילינו מכל צרה וצוקה ומכל נגע ומחלה, וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיהם. ידבר שונאינו תחתיהם, ויעטרם בכתר ישועה ובעטרת ניצחון, ויקוים בהם הכתוב.